The Seine River is one of the most significant and iconic rivers of France, not merely in geographical or hydrological terms, but also in the realm of culture, history, and civilization. Its very name conjures the images of Paris, romantic bridges, historic quays, and a centuries long relationship between nature and urban evolution. The Seine originates in the Langres Plateau in the Côte d'Or department of the Bourgogne-Franche-Comté region in northeastern France. The exact source lies at an elevation of approximately 470 meters above sea level in a place called Source Seine, located about 30 kilometers northwest of Dijon. From this point, the river travels a sinuous path of about 777 kilometers, roughly 483 miles, following generally northwest before emptying into the English Channel at the port city of Le Havre through a wide estuary known as the Seine Estuary. Along this course, the river drains a basin of over 78,000 square kilometers, encompassing a large portion of north-central France. Hydrologically, the Seine is classified as a lowland river, which means that its gradient, the steepness of its course, is relatively gentle. This makes it navigable for a considerable portion of its length. The river is fed by several tributaries, both left bank and right bank, the most notable being the Aube, the Marne, the Yonne, the Oise, and the Eure. These tributaries contribute to the Seine's moderate discharge, which varies seasonally, but averages around 500 cubic meters per second in Paris. The river is subject to periodic flooding, with historical floods such as the Great Flood of 1910 having left an indelible mark on the city of Paris and on the French flood control policy. In geographical terms, the Seine's course can be divided into several sections, each with distinct topographical, ecological, and human characteristics. The upper Seine, from its source to Montreal-Fault-Yonne, is relatively narrow and winding, with a rural landscape dominated by farmlands and forests. The middle Seine, from Monterey to Paris, becomes wider and more heavily utilized, with numerous locks and canals to support navigation. The lower Seine, downstream of Paris, is a broad waterway heavily industrialized in many stretches, particularly around Rouen and toward the estuary. Paris, of course, is the most notable urban center along the Seine. The river bisects the city from southeast to northwest, and its presence has shaped the very identity and physical structure of the French capital. The historical heart of Paris, the Ile de la Cité, sits in the middle of the Seine and is the site of Notre Dame Cathedral, a symbol not only of Gothic architecture but also of French cultural resilience. The Seine defines the city's arrondissements, with the left bank, Rive Gauche, and the right bank, Rive Droite, becoming shorthand for different social, economic, and cultural zones. Bridges such as Pont Neuf, Pont Alexandre III, and Pont des Arts are not merely utilitarian structures, but are imbued with historical and symbolic meaning. The Seine has long played a critical role in commerce and transportation. Since Roman times, the river has served as a vital artery for the movement of goods, including grain, wine, stone, and later industrial products. The development of river ports, particularly the Port de Paris and the large river seaport Rouen, has maintained the Seine's commercial relevance even in the age of rail and motorways. The river is heavily engineered with a system of locks, canals like the Canal Saint Martin, and reservoirs constructed to stabilize its flow and accommodate navigation. Modern barges and river cruises now dominate the Seine's traffic within Paris and beyond. In ecological terms, the Seine was once heavily polluted, particularly in the post-industrial decades of the 20th century. However, significant efforts in environmental regulation, wastewater treatment, and ecological restoration have led to a substantial improvement in water quality. Fish species that had disappeared from the river, such as salmon, have begun to return in small numbers, signaling gradual ecological recovery. Culturally, the Seine has occupied a nearly mythical position in French literature, French painting, cinema, and music. It appears prominently in the works of poets like Charles Baudelaire, painters like Claude Monet, especially his series of paintings of the riverbanks, and filmmakers who have used it as a setting or metaphor. The river embodies both continuity and change, the flowing symbol of Parisian life, as well as a representation of time, memory, and urban rhythm. Many artists of the Impressionist and Post-Impressionist schools found their subject matter along the Seine, capturing its shifting colors, light reflections, and human activity. The Seine also plays a ceremonial and symbolic role in French national life. It has been the route of victory parades, funeral processions, such as the transfer of Napoleon's remains, and major public celebrations. Its quays are registered as a UNESCO World Heritage Site due to their exceptional architectural, historical, and aesthetic value. The annual Paris Plagues, which is Paris Beaches event, the annual event, transforms the riverbanks into recreational areas during the summer, demonstrating the ongoing reimagination of urban space around the river. What is a river? A river, in the most fundamental physical and geographical terms, is a natural flowing watercourse, usually fresh water, that moves continuously from a source or origin point, often a spring, glacier, or runoff point in highland areas, towards a larger body of water, such as an ocean, sea, lake, or another river. However, to understand rivers in their full significance, one must pay attention to the following. The origin or source of a river is typically located in a high altitude region where precipitation, snowmelt, or underground springs initiate the flow of water. This uppermost section is referred to as the river's headwaters. From there, the river progresses through various stages, commonly identified as the upper course, middle course, and lower course, each having distinctive topographical and hydrological characteristics. In the upper course, the river tends to be youthful and fast-flowing, with steep gradients and pronounced erosive power. This section is dominated by vertical erosion, forming V-shaped valleys, interlocking spurs, waterfalls, and rapids. As it transitions to the middle course, the river's gradient becomes gentler, its volume increases due to tributary input, and lateral erosion becomes more significant. This gives rise to meanders, floodplains, and oxbow lakes. In the lower course, the river achieves its maximum width and volume, flowing slowly over flatter terrain. It deposits the sediment it has carried throughout its course, forming features like deltas, estuaries, levees, and alluvial plains before entering its mouth, where it discharges into a larger water body. Hydrologically, rivers are integral to the water cycle. They act as conduits for the movement of precipitation and groundwater back to the oceans, facilitating evaporation and subsequent atmospheric processes. They are also defined by discharge, the volume of water flowing per unit time, typically measured in cubic meters per second. This discharge can vary seasonally or be influenced by climatic phenomena like snowmelt, monsoons, or droughts. A river's drainage basin or watershed encompasses all the land area that contributes water to the river through surface runoff or tributaries. These basins can be extensive, for example, the Amazon basin, and often cut across political borders. From a geomorphological standpoint, rivers play a vital role in shaping the Earth's surface through the mechanisms of erosion, transportation, and deposition. These fluvial processes sculpt landscapes over geological timescales, creating valleys, canyons, deltas, and sedimentary basins. Rivers are also responsible for transporting dissolved ions, nutrients, organic matter, and sediments, all of which contribute to soil fertility and landscape evolution. Ecologically, rivers are linear ecosystems of immense biological importance. They support diverse biotic communities, including fish, amphibians, aquatic invertebrates, birds, and riparian vegetation. Rivers also connect terrestrial and marine ecosystems, serving as ecological corridors for the migration and genetic flow of species. They provide breeding grounds, food sources, and habitats, and their seasonal flooding replenishes nutrients in adjacent floodplains, supporting both biodiversity and agriculture. Civilizationally, rivers have been fundamental to the development of human societies. The earliest human settlements arose near rivers, which provided water for drinking, irrigation, fishing, sanitation, and transport. Great civilizations, such as those of the Nile, Egypt, Tigris-Euphrates, Mesopotamia, Indus, Harappan civilization, and the Yellow River, China, demonstrate how rivers formed the backbone of agricultural, urban, and cultural development. Their annual flooding cycles determined agricultural calendars and often had theological or mythological significance in ancient societies. Economically, rivers remain indispensable. They serve as sources of fresh water, a resource more valuable than any commodity. They enable irrigation, hydropower generation, navigation, and industrial usage. Riverine ports facilitate inland trade and transportation. Additionally, rivers are central to tourism, recreation, and fisheries. However, these uses often generate environmental stress, particularly when rivers are dammed, polluted, or diverted, leading to the degradation of ecosystems, loss of biodiversity, and geopolitical conflicts over water rights. From a legal and political perspective, rivers that traverse international boundaries, known as transboundary or international rivers, are often sources of contention and cooperation. Treaties, conventions, and river basin organizations aim to manage these shared resources equitably, though tensions can arise, particularly in water-scarce regions. Examples include the Nile Basin Initiative, the Indus Waters Treaty, and the Mekong River Commission. In literature, symbolism, and philosophy, rivers have held enduring metaphoric power. They are frequently associated with life, time, death, renewal, and journeying. The concept of a river as a metaphor for the passage of time or human experience is deeply embedded in the cultural consciousness across civilizations, from Heraclitus's assertion that one cannot step into the same river twice to the sacred rivers in Hinduism, such as the Ganges, which is venerated as a goddess and purifier. Scientifically, rivers are studied within the field of fluvial geomorphology, hydrology, and aquatic ecology. Researchers analyze river morphology, sediment load, flow regimes, and ecological dynamics to better understand environmental change and to design sustainable river management strategies. Techniques such as remote sensing, geographic information systems (GIS), and computational hydrodynamic modeling are used to monitor river behavior and predict the impacts of climate change, urbanization, and dam construction. In the modern era, rivers face a suite of challenges, including pollution from industrial and agricultural runoff, over extraction of water, habitat fragmentation due to damming, urban encroachment on floodplains, and alterations due to climate change. The resulting changes in flow regimes, temperature, and sediment loads can have cascading effects on ecosystems, agriculture, and water availability for human consumption. River restoration has thus emerged as a crucial field of environmental policy and engineering, aiming to rehabilitate rivers to a more natural, self-sustaining state by removing obstructions, restoring meanders, and improving water quality.